Welcome to Heartfelt Revenge Stories. I'm Sarah, and I'm 32 years old. 3 weeks ago, something happened at my father's retirement celebration that made me decide to cut myself out of this family's life forever. And I mean permanently. Picture this scene with me: an elegant country club ballroom shimmering with crystal chandeliers, 200 guests dressed to impress in designer suits and evening gowns, champagne flowing like a river. My father stood center stage, microphone in hand, introducing each member of his family one by one. When he got to me, he smiled. That same smile I'd witnessed 1,000 times before. The one that appeared warm and loving to everyone watching, but somehow always felt like broken glass against my skin. "And this," he announced to the crowd, "is my daughter, Sarah." He paused, and I could feel what was coming. No college degree to speak of, no real career path, just, well, she enjoys the benefits of family support, shall we say. 200 people erupted in laughter. I didn't flinch. I didn't shed a single tear. I simply smiled back at him, raised my champagne glass high in the air, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Cheers to that. This will be the absolute last time any of you lay eyes on me." Then I turned and walked straight out of that ballroom. The room fell into complete, stunned silence behind me. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. So what happened next, you're wondering? That's exactly what I'm about to share with you. But first, let me take you back 12 long years to the day my life changed forever. The day I was forced to abandon my education. The Morrison family of Westchester County. That's how everyone knew us. Upper middle class, respectable, picture perfect from the outside. My father, Thomas Morrison, served as CEO of a medium-sized logistics firm. We lived in a sprawling 6-bedroom colonial house sitting on 2 pristine acres. A black Mercedes S-Class gleamed in our circular driveway. We held membership at the most exclusive country club in 3 counties. From the outside looking in, we appeared absolutely perfect. My mother passed away when I was only 8 years old. Cancer took her quickly, brutally. I can barely remember her face anymore without pulling out old photographs, but I remember her hands so clearly. Soft hands, always reaching for mine, always there to hold me. 2 years after losing her, my father remarried. Her name was Catherine. She brought a son with her from her previous marriage, Derek, who was 3 years older than me. Within just a few months, they weren't simply part of our family, they were the family. And I became like furniture, not in any dramatic Cinderella-style way, you understand. No theatrical abuse, just invisibility. Derek received endless praise for his grades. Mine went completely unnoticed, unacknowledged. Derek got a brand new car when he turned 16. I inherited his old beat-up hand-me-down. Derek was groomed as the future of the company. I was just there, taking up space. My father never once raised a hand to me, never screamed in my face. He simply looked right through me, as if I were a window he was trying to see past to something more important on the other side. But there was one person, just one, who truly saw me. My grandmother, Elizabeth Morrison, my father's mother. She called me every single Sunday without fail. She asked about my classes, my friends, my dreams for the future. She'd say things like, "You remind me so much of myself at your age, Sarah, underestimated by everyone around you. But I see you, sweetheart. I see exactly who you are." She left me something when she died, something no one else in the family knew existed. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Growing up in this family, I learned to become invisible. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't possibly understand, is that this invisibility would eventually become my greatest weapon. The day my entire future was decided for me without my consent, I was 20 years old, sophomore year at NYU, business major, maintaining a solid 3.8 GPA. I had plans stretching out before me, dreams. There was a scholarship application sitting on my desk for a prestigious summer program in London. My father called me home on a Wednesday afternoon. "Family meeting," he said curtly over the phone. Those two words had never, ever meant anything good in our household. I found him waiting in his study, that imposing mahogany desk, his leather executive chair, walls lined floor to ceiling with awards and certificates celebrating his achievements. Catherine stood right beside him, her manicured hand resting supportively on his shoulder. United Front, Team Morrison. Sarah, my father began, not even bothering to look up from the papers spread before him. We need to make some difficult sacrifices as a family. My heart rate didn't change. I already knew exactly where this conversation was heading. Derek has been accepted into the Wharton MBA program, he continued, still studying those papers. It's an absolutely incredible opportunity for him. I sat perfectly still, waiting. We can't afford both your college tuition and his MBA program, he stated flatly. So we've decided that you'll take a break from school. Just temporarily, you understand. Derek's career will ultimately benefit the entire family. Catherine nodded, her voice dripping with honey-sweet concern. A young woman doesn't really need an MBA to have a fulfilling life, Sarah. You'll find a nice husband someday. Settle down. That's what truly matters in the end. I sat there frozen in that chair, not because I felt surprised by their decision, but because some small, stupid, desperate part of me had still hoped, had still believed they might choose me, just once. You promised you'd support my education, I heard my own voice say, sounding distant and strange. You promised Mom before she died that you would always support my education. My father's jaw tightened visibly, his hands clenched. Circumstances change, Sarah. When the company stabilizes financially, I'll make it up to you somehow. He never did. He never intended to. What I discovered later, much later, through a careless slip of the tongue from a cousin, was that there was plenty of money available, more than enough. They simply chose not to spend a single dollar of it on me. I didn't argue with them that day. I didn't fight back or make a scene. I just nodded quietly, stood up, and left that study. But inside, deep in my core, I made myself a solemn promise. This was the absolute last time I would ever let anyone else determine my worth. Before we continue, I need to pause for just a moment. If you're still with me, if this story is resonating with you in any way, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps more than you know, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on, because what happens next? Let's just say my father had no idea what he'd set in motion. Also, drop a comment right now telling me, have you ever had someone in your family make you feel invisible? Because I promise you, you're not alone in this. Now, let me tell you what happened when I left home with almost nothing. I moved to Boston with exactly $2,000 in savings and a single suitcase packed with clothes that didn't fit the life I was leaving behind. My first apartment was a tiny 400-square-foot studio situated directly above a laundromat in Allston. The ancient radiator clanked and banged all night long, every night. The walls were so thin I could hear every word of my neighbor's television shows. I ate ramen noodles for dinner and survived on day-old bagels from the cafe where I worked morning shifts. But here's the thing about rock bottom that nobody tells you. Once you're there, you can't fall any further. There's a strange freedom in that. I landed a job as an administrative assistant at a small logistics company. Entry-level position, minimum wage plus basic benefits. Nothing glamorous whatsoever. The owner, this gruff, no-nonsense man named Walter Barnes, saw something in me that my own family never had. "You've got a brain, Sarah," he told me one afternoon when I stayed late organizing files. "Use it. Don't waste it." So I did exactly that. I stayed late every single night. I learned every system, every process, every detail of how the business operated. I took free online courses after work, teaching myself supply chain management, operations, business fundamentals. MIT OpenCourseWare became my university, my classroom, my education. I didn't call home, not once. I didn't ask for a single dollar from them.
When my father's secretary sent me a birthday card one year with a $50 check enclosed and a note saying, "From the family," I tore that check into tiny pieces and threw every scrap in the trash. 4 years after I left Connecticut behind, I had saved enough money to start my own consulting firm, Apex Consulting LLC. Just me, a laptop, and a rented desk in a shared co-working space downtown. I kept my name completely off anything public-facing. No LinkedIn profile with my photo, no press releases announcing the company, no personal website. All business communications went through the company name and my attorney. Why all the secrecy, you might wonder? Because I knew my family. I understood exactly how they operated. If they discovered I was actually succeeding, actually building something real, they would find some way to take credit for it or systematically tear it down. They couldn't let me win. It would destroy their entire narrative. Some people build empires to prove their worth to the world. I built mine in complete silence because silence was the only language my family had ever taught me to speak. Grandmother Elizabeth died 2 years ago when I was 30, and what she'd left me, what she'd been planning for years without anyone knowing, it changed absolutely everything. But the real shock? She knew. She knew exactly what they'd done to me all along, and she'd been preparing her revenge from beyond the grave. Stay with me, because what's coming next will blow your mind.
Grandmother Elizabeth passed away 2 years ago when I turned 30. I flew back to Connecticut for her funeral, slipped into the back pew of the church, and watched in silence as my father delivered this beautiful, touching eulogy about a remarkable woman who had dedicated her entire life to family. The irony was so thick I could taste it on my tongue, so bitter, so absurd. At the reception following the service, I kept completely to myself, stayed in the corners. No one seemed to notice I was even there, which was precisely how I wanted it. But 3 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. Boston area code. It was a lawyer I'd never heard of before, Eleanor Chen from a prestigious Boston firm specializing in estate planning. "Miss Morrison," she said in this calm, professional voice, "I represent your grandmother's separate estate. She established a private trust fund in your name 8 years ago, with very explicit instructions that no other family member be informed of its existence under any circumstances." I nearly dropped my phone right there. My hands started shaking. "The trust contains $800,000, Eleanor continued matter-of-factly, as if she was discussing the weather. "She also left a personal letter for you. Would you like me to read it to you now?" I said yes, though my voice didn't sound like my own anymore. It sounded far away, underwater. Eleanor began reading. "My dearest Sarah, I know what they did to you. I know about the tuition money, the broken promises, all of it. Every single betrayal. I argued with your father until I had no words left to say, until my voice was hoarse. He wouldn't listen to me. He never does, he never has. This money is yours alone. No strings attached. No conditions, no requirements. Use it to build the life you deserve, the life they tried so desperately to take from you. Remember what I always told you, sweetheart. Don't let anyone tell you you're not worthy. And when they finally see your true worth, when they finally realize what they've lost, it will be far too late for them. I believe in you. I always have. I always will. All my love, Grandma Elizabeth." Oh, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. Tears streamed down my face as I sat there in my tiny apartment, holding that phone, listening to my grandmother's final words to me. I used part of that money to expand Apex Consulting significantly, hired real employees, moved into a proper office. The rest I kept carefully invested as insurance for a day I hoped would never come, but somehow always knew might arrive. That day came 3 weeks ago. Let me tell you about Apex Consulting today, right now, at this moment. 15 full-time employees, $4 million in annual revenue, beautiful offices in Back Bay, Boston, the kind of prestigious address that makes people take you seriously before you even open your mouth to speak. I wear Cartier now, not because I need to impress anyone or prove anything, but because I earned every single piece myself, with my own work, my own skill, my own determination.
We specialize in logistics optimization. We help companies streamline their supply chains, reduce operational costs, improve efficiency across the board. It's not glamorous work, I'll admit. It's not sexy or exciting, but it's highly profitable, and I'm exceptionally good at it. Now, here's the part that would make you laugh out loud if it weren't so painfully, devastatingly ironic. One of our biggest clients, our most important account, is Morrison Logistics, my father's company. They signed a comprehensive 5-year service contract with us 3 years ago. We handle absolutely everything for them: route optimization, warehouse management systems, consulting services, carrier negotiations. The contract is worth approximately 40% of their annual revenue in operational savings. 40%, nearly half their success. My father has absolutely no idea, none whatsoever. All communications flow through my team members. All contracts are signed by my CFO, Daniel Martinez. The few times Thomas Morrison has praised Apex Consulting at industry conferences and networking events, he's been unknowingly praising his own daughter's work, the daughter he publicly declared worthless, the daughter he abandoned. The irony is absolutely delicious. I need to pause here because I can see some of you in the comments already asking questions, and I want to address something important. This isn't about revenge. Not really. This is about something much deeper than that. This is about reclaiming what was stolen from me: my voice, my worth, my future. If you're understanding what I'm saying, if you've ever had someone underestimate you and later regretted it, smash that like button right now. And please, please subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on those notifications, because what happens at that retirement party, what I do next, it's going to shock you. Comment below, "I see my worth," if this story is speaking to your soul. Let me know you're out there, that you're listening, that you understand. Now, back to that fateful night.
3 weeks ago, I received a formal invitation in the mail. Thick, expensive cardstock, gold-embossed lettering that probably cost a fortune. Thomas Morrison requests the pleasure of your company at his retirement celebration. I almost threw it directly in the trash. Almost. My hand hovered over the garbage can for a long moment. But then I thought about Grandma Elizabeth. I thought about 12 years of silence, of invisibility, of every broken promise and every door slammed in my face. I thought about that $800,000 sitting in my account. I thought about the power I now held. I RSVP'd yes, not because I wanted some tearful reconciliation, not because I hoped things had magically changed or that my father had suddenly developed a conscience. I went because I knew with absolute certainty deep in my bones that my father would do something unforgivable at this event. And when he did, I wanted to be standing right there to say goodbye on my own terms, to take back my power, to walk away with my head held high. I just didn't know exactly how right I would be about his behavior. The Westchester Country Club hasn't changed in 30 years. Same massive Swarovski crystal chandeliers casting rainbow light across the marble floors. Same pretentious valet service with attendants in bow ties. Same crowd of old money mixing uncomfortably with new ambition. Everyone pretending they all belong together in this exclusive space. I wore a black Valentino dress, simple lines, elegant cut, expensive fabric. My grandmother's pearl earrings that she'd left specifically to me, Cartier watch catching the light, Hermes Birkin bag that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Everything I owned, every single item I wore, I had purchased myself. That mattered to me more than any designer label ever could. Catherine intercepted me right at the entrance, before I could even step fully inside. She'd aged since I'd last seen her, new lines around her eyes and mouth, but her smile hadn't changed one bit. Still that perfect mask of warmth, hiding something so much colder underneath. Her dress was Chanel, her diamonds were large, ostentatious. Her eyes performed a quick, calculating inventory of my outfit before she spoke. "Sarah, you actually came." Her tone suggested this was simultaneously a pleasant surprise and a minor inconvenience she'd have to manage.
Your father wasn't entirely sure you'd have anything appropriate to wear to an event like this. I smiled sweetly. How thoughtful of him to worry about my wardrobe. I'm touched, truly. Inside the ballroom, 200 guests mingled beneath those crystal lights, the absolute who's who of Connecticut business circles. Bankers in expensive suits, lawyers with practiced smiles, corporate executives, local politicians. I recognized some faces from my father's old dinner parties when I was young, back when I was still occasionally acknowledged. None of them recognized me now, not a single one. I'd become invisible even to people who'd once known my name. Derek swept past me with a model thin blonde clinging to his arm, designer dress, vacant smile. He didn't even glance in my direction. He was too busy telling someone about his grand vision for the company's future expansion. Classic Derek, I thought. All confidence, absolutely no substance. I found my seat assignment at the entrance, table 14, the far corner of the ballroom, practically hidden near the service entrance where staff carried trays in and out. My table mates were listed as friends of the family I'd never met in my entire life. Not the family table, of course, not even close to it. I wasn't surprised, but I noted it carefully, filed it away. Another small cut, another tiny reminder of exactly where I ranked in this family's hierarchy. A waiter appeared offering champagne, Dom Perignon naturally, nothing but the absolute best for Thomas Morrison's big celebration night. I took a glass, sipped slowly. Across the crowded room, I caught my father's eye. He looked at me for just a moment, a brief nod, a dismissal disguised as acknowledgement. Then he turned smoothly back to his important guests, his real audience. The evening was just beginning, and I had a front row seat to my own family's contempt. What I overheard in the next hour, standing there in my corner with my champagne, would have devastated most people. But me? Ha! I smiled, because I knew something they didn't. I knew exactly how much power I actually held over every single person in that room, especially my father. And soon, very soon, they were all going to find out. Don't go anywhere. This is where everything changes.
I've learned something important over the years. The best, most valuable information often comes from staying quiet, keeping your mouth shut, and keeping your ears wide open. From my corner table, nearly forgotten by everyone in that glittering ballroom, I watched. I listened. I observed. The acoustics in that space carried conversations much better than people realized. Their voices drifted across the room like music. My father stood near the bar, surrounded by business associates, holding court like the king he'd always believed himself to be. I heard him mention operational restructuring and strategic partnerships, standard executive speak, corporate buzzwords. But then something else, something that made me grip my champagne glass just a little tighter. Apex Consulting has been absolutely transformative for us, he was saying to a silver-haired man I recognized as a major shipping executive. They're genuinely the backbone of our operations now. Whoever runs that company is a complete genius. The other man nodded thoughtfully. I've been trying desperately to get a meeting with them for 6 months. Very private operation, extremely secretive. Do you know who's actually behind it? My father shrugged casually. Never met them personally, to be honest. Everything goes through their legal team and account managers. But honestly, I don't care who they are as long as they keep delivering these incredible results quarter after quarter. I took a slow sip of champagne to hide the smile spreading across my face. Huh. My phone buzzed in my bag. A text from Daniel, my CFO. Contract renewal documents from Morrison Logistics just arrived. They want another 5 years. Waiting on your decision about how to proceed. I typed back quickly. I'll have an answer by end of week. What my father didn't know, what absolutely nobody in that entire room knew, was that Apex's contract with Morrison Logistics was coming up for renewal in exactly 60 days. If we walked away, if I chose to terminate that contract, they would lose 40% of their operational efficiency overnight, immediately. In the logistics industry, that's not just an inconvenience or a setback, that's a death sentence, a company killer.
I hadn't decided yet what I would do. Part of me genuinely wanted to keep the professional relationship completely separate from all the personal toxicity and pain. Business is business, after all. But as I watched my father standing there, basking in praise for his company's success built substantially on my work, on my expertise, on my innovation, I felt something shift deep inside me, something fundamental, something irreversible. Tonight would determine everything. His next words, his next actions would make my decision for me. I needed a refill on my champagne, or maybe I just needed to move, to shake off this strange building energy in my chest. At the bar, I ran straight into the extended family firing squad. Aunt Michelle, Catherine's younger sister, spotted me first. Her face did this thing where surprise became pity, became condescension in about half a second flat. "Sarah, oh my goodness, I almost didn't recognize you. You look, well, still up in Boston doing whatever it is you do there." "Consulting," I said clearly. "Supply chain management." "Oh, how nice." The way she said it made it sound like I'd just told her I collected bottle caps as a hobby. "Are you seeing anyone special? Your father mentioned you're still single at, what is it now, 32? Time certainly flies, doesn't it?" Before I could formulate a response, Uncle David joined the conversation, drink in hand. "Thomas was just telling us you're still figuring things out career-wise. Nothing wrong with being a late bloomer, I suppose. Not everyone is meant for traditional success. Some people just take longer to find their path." I realized with cold, crystal clarity what had happened here. My father had briefed them beforehand, given them talking points about me, set the narrative before I even arrived, painted me as the family disappointment, the project, the concern. "Thomas mentioned you had some emotional difficulties after leaving school. Mental health issues can be so challenging. It's very brave of you to come tonight despite everything you've been through." I felt my grip tighten on my champagne glass, not from hurt anymore. I was long past hurt. I was beyond that now. This was from the sheer, breathtaking audacity of it all.
I appreciate your concern, I said, keeping my voice perfectly steady, perfectly calm. But I'm actually doing very well, better than I've ever been in my entire life. They exchanged those glances. You know the ones, the kind that says, "Poor thing, doesn't even know how far she's fallen. She's delusional." I excused myself before I said something I might actually regret, before I showed them exactly how wrong they were. But a plan was forming in my mind now, cold, clear, inevitable, absolutely necessary. Derek found me out on the terrace a few minutes later. I was standing there looking out at the perfectly manicured golf course, watching the September stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Well, well, well." His voice came from directly behind me, heavy with contempt and alcohol. "The prodigal daughter returns." I didn't turn around, didn't give him the satisfaction. "Derek." He stepped beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Tom Ford, probably, almost certainly a gift from our father. "Dad's about to give his big speech," he said. "I wanted to make sure you weren't planning any dramatic scenes, no embarrassing outbursts." "Why would I do that?" "Because you've always been jealous." He said it like it was established fact, like it was written in stone somewhere. The way you stormed off after the tuition decision like a spoiled child. The way you disappeared to Boston like some wounded animal crawling away to die. You've never gotten over it, have you? Still bitter after all these years. Now I turned, looked directly at my stepbrother in his $5,000 suit, his Rolex watch, his perfectly styled hair, his arrogant smirk. "Is that what you tell yourself?" I asked quietly. His eyes hardened. "I heard you started some kind of company up there, playing businesswoman." He laughed, short and cruel. "How long until it fails completely? 6 months? Maybe a year? Then you'll come crawling back here, begging Dad for help like we all know you will." "I won't." "You will. You always do. You're weak, Sarah. You always have been. It's just who you are."
I could have told him everything right then about Apex, about the contract, about how his precious company's success was built substantially on the work of the sister he dismissed so easily, so cruelly. But I didn't, because some revelations need the perfect stage, the perfect moment, the perfect audience. You know what, Derek? I started to walk past him. You can believe whatever makes you feel better about yourself, whatever helps you sleep at night. But I promise you this. I paused right beside him. After tonight, after what happens in there, you're going to wish desperately that you'd treated me differently. His laugh followed me back inside, dismissive, arrogant, condescending. Ha! He had absolutely no idea what was coming. None of them did. The reckoning was about to begin. Okay, I need you to do something for me right now. If you're sitting there thinking, I know exactly how she feels, or I've had people underestimate me like this, I need you to hit that subscribe button immediately. Because what happens next, what my father says on that stage, it's the moment that changes everything forever. And listen, I know some of you are probably thinking I should have just let it go, just walked away quietly without confrontation. But sometimes you need to stand up and show them exactly who you are. Sometimes silence isn't strength. Sometimes strength is making them see the truth. Comment right now. Show them your worth if you're ready for this next part. Now let me tell you about the speech that set me free. The ballroom lights dimmed dramatically. A single spotlight hit the stage like a beacon. My father climbed those steps to absolutely thunderous applause, the conquering hero of Connecticut logistics, taking his final bow. And then he opened his mouth. And then he said the words that would destroy everything he'd built. What happened next? Oh, what I did in response, it's something I'll never regret as long as I live. Stay with me. You need to hear this.
The ballroom lights dimmed. That single spotlight illuminated the stage like this was Broadway, like this was the performance of a lifetime. My father climbed those steps slowly, deliberately, soaking in the thunderous applause that erupted around him. The conquering hero, the self-made man, the legend of Connecticut logistics. Thank you so much, he said, his voice carrying that practiced warmth he'd perfected over 4 decades. 40 years in this business. It's been one hell of a ride, let me tell you. Laughter rippled through the crowd, more applause. He was in his element, absolutely glowing. He began his speech, thanking partners by name, thanking employees for their dedication, thanking mentors, long retired or dead, thanking God, thanking luck, taking credit for absolutely everything good that had ever happened. Then came the family segment, the part I'd been dreading. I couldn't have done any of this without my incredible wife, Catherine. He gestured toward her table with genuine warmth. 30 years of putting up with my late nights at the office, my endless business trips. You're a saint, sweetheart, a genuine saint. More applause. Catherine dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, perfectly on cue, the supportive wife, the devoted partner. And my son Derek, who will be taking over as CEO come January 1st, Richard beamed with unmistakable pride. The future of Morrison Logistics. I couldn't be prouder of the man he's become. Standing ovation. Derek rose from his seat, waved to the crowd like visiting royalty, the picture of corporate succession, the chosen one, the heir. Then my father's eyes found me across that crowded room, and something shifted in his expression, something mean, something cruel, something that sent ice through my veins. And of course, my daughter Sarah. The spotlight swung violently to my table. I felt 200 pairs of eyes turn toward me in unison, staring, judging, waiting. No college degree to speak of, no real career path. He paused for comedic effect, letting the moment breathe. Just freeloads off the family when she needs to, really. But hey, another pause, another smile. At least she showed up tonight. Maybe someday she'll find a rich husband to take care of her properly. The room absolutely erupted in laughter.
Real laughter, genuine laughter, the kind that comes from people who think they're in on a harmless joke, who don't realize they're watching cruelty dressed up as comedy, who don't understand they're witnessing a father destroying his daughter in public. I sat perfectly still, completely motionless. Didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't look away from that spotlight. I just waited, patient, calm, ready. The laughter began to fade slowly, awkwardly, as people noticed I wasn't laughing along, wasn't playing my assigned role in this performance. And then I stood up. The room went completely, utterly, devastatingly quiet. I could feel every single eye on me now, some curious, some pitying, some already preparing to witness a breakdown, a meltdown, the unstable daughter finally cracking under her father's harmless joke. I picked up my champagne glass, slowly, deliberately. My hand didn't shake even slightly. My father's smile faltered just a fraction, just enough for me to notice. He hadn't expected me to react at all. I was supposed to sit there and take it like I always had, like I'd done my entire life. The invisible daughter, the disappointment, the joke. I raised the glass toward him, high, clear, unmistakable. Congratulations on your retirement, Dad. 40 years in business. Quite an achievement. Quite a legacy.
I paused. Let the silence build. Let the tension grow. You taught me so much about hard work over the years, about sacrifice, about perseverance. Another pause. And about exactly what kind of loyalty family can expect from you when times get difficult. The silence was absolute now, suffocating. I could hear someone's ice clinking in their glass 3 tables away. I could hear the air conditioning humming. I could hear my own heartbeat. So here's to you, Dad. I lifted my champagne even higher. Cheers. This is the absolute last time any of you will see me. Ever. I set the glass down on the table without drinking a single drop. Then I picked up my Birkin bag, turned, and walked toward the exit. My Louis Vuitton heels clicked against the hardwood floor. Click, click, click. The only sound in that cavernous room. The only movement in a frozen tableau. I didn't run, didn't hurry, didn't rush. Just walked, spine straight, head high, shoulders back. Every step deliberate and certain. Behind me, silence. Complete, total, devastating silence. Someone gasped audibly. Someone else whispered something I couldn't quite hear, but mostly there was just the echo of my footsteps and 200 people trying to process what they'd just witnessed. The daughter who was supposed to be broken, who was supposed to be defeated, had just walked out on her own terms. I pushed through those heavy double doors and stepped into the cool night air. And for the first time in 12 long years, I could breathe. I could actually breathe freely. I was almost to my car, a black Tesla Model S with custom plates reading Apex 1, when I heard rapid footsteps behind me on the pavement. Sarah, Sarah, stop right there. Catherine's voice, shrill, furious, all pretense of warmth completely abandoned. I kept walking, didn't slow down, didn't acknowledge her. What do you think you're doing? She grabbed my arm hard, spinning me around to face her. Her face was flushed red beneath the country club's exterior lights, her careful composure completely cracked. Do you have any idea what you just did in there? You humiliated your father in front of everyone who matters. Everyone. I looked pointedly at her hand gripping my arm, until she removed it. You humiliated him? I asked quietly, dangerously. I think you have that completely backwards, Catherine. My father appeared behind her then, his face like a thundercloud. 200 guests were probably pressed against the windows watching this scene unfold. He was aware of that. I could see him calculating, trying to control the optics even now. Get back inside, he said, his voice low and dangerous and trembling with rage. Apologize to everyone, right now, immediately. No. The single word hung in the air between us like a grenade. This isn't a negotiation, Sarah. I'm your father. I'm telling you what you're going to do. You're telling me what? I cut him off, something I'd never,
ever done before in my entire life. That I should go back in there and let you keep using me as your punchline? That I should smile while you tell 200 people I'm worthless? That I should thank you for the privilege? It was a joke, light humor. You're being overly sensitive. It was the truth of how you see me, I said clearly. And I'm done. I'm absolutely done pretending otherwise. I opened my car door. The Tesla unlocked with a soft beep. My father stepped forward, blocking my path. If you leave right now, you're finished. Do you understand me? No more family, no more support, nothing. You'll be completely on your own. I almost laughed out loud. Almost. The absurdity was too perfect. Dad, I said, meeting his eyes directly, you cut me off 12 years ago. You just never had the courage to say it out loud. You just kept pretending, kept up appearances. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine. The Tesla purred to life silently. Tonight, I said, looking up at him through the open door, I'm making it official. Goodbye, Dad. Goodbye, Catherine. Have a wonderful rest of your lives. And I drove away. I pulled into a rest stop about 20 minutes outside Westchester, hands still gripping the wheel, engine idling, my whole body trembling now that I was alone. For a long moment, I just sat there in that parking lot and breathed, just breathed. Okay, I need to step out of the story for just a second and talk directly to you, to whoever's listening to this right now. I know some of you watching this, some of you listening, have been through something similar. Maybe not a retirement party, maybe not 200 witnesses, but that feeling of being the family disappointment, the one they talk about in whispers, the one whose success they refuse to acknowledge or see. I know you understand this. I know you feel it. If you've ever sat at a family gathering while someone made you the punchline of their joke, if you've ever smiled through pain because making a scene would only prove them right in their minds, if you've ever loved people who made you feel invisible, worthless, less than, this story is for you. This is your story too. Tell me in the comments, and if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. So here's what I'm asking. If any of this is resonating deep in your soul, drop a comment. Tell me your story, or just let me know you're here, that you're listening, that you understand. Because honestly, knowing I'm not alone in this, knowing there are others out there who get it, that means more than you can possibly imagine. And if you want to know what happened next, and trust me, the next part is where everything truly changes, where the full truth comes out, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that bell icon, because what my father discovered in the weeks after that party, let's just say he learned exactly, precisely how wrong he was about me. Now, back to the story, to the reckoning, to the truth.
The morning after that party, I woke up in my Boston apartment feeling lighter than I had in years, freer, like I'd shed a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. But I knew it wasn't over, not even close. Families like mine, families like this, they don't let go that easily. They would try to control the narrative, spin the story, make me the villain, paint me as unstable, as jealous, as mentally ill. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that I had something they couldn't spin their way out of: evidence, truth, power. And I was about to use every bit of it. The morning after the party, I woke up in my sunlit Boston apartment feeling lighter than I had felt in years, decades even. But I knew with absolute certainty it wasn't over. Not yet. Families like mine don't let go easily. They would scramble to control the narrative, spin the story in their favor, make me the villain, the unstable daughter who had some kind of breakdown at her father's retirement celebration. What they didn't know was that I had something they couldn't possibly spin their way out of. Let me tell you about the week that followed. It started with text messages, not from my father, of course. He was far too proud for direct contact, but from cousins, aunts, family friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly desperately concerned about my mental state. "Sarah, I heard about what happened at the party. Your dad says you're struggling emotionally. Do you need professional help? Michelle told me you had some kind of breakdown. We're all so worried about you, sweetie." Your father loves you so much. He just wants what's best. Maybe you should apologize and come home where we can take care of you." The narrative was already being written, being spread, being set in stone. Poor Sarah, unstable, jealous, had some kind of episode at the party. Thomas Morrison, patient and loving father, doing his absolute best with a troubled, difficult daughter. I didn't respond to a single message, not one. Then came the more interesting call. My phone rang Tuesday afternoon. Connecticut number I didn't recognize. I answered anyway. "Hello?" "Ms. Morrison, this is James Crawford. I'm a senior partner at Morrison Logistics." The voice was polished, professional, carefully neutral. "I'm calling on behalf of Thomas. He'd like to discuss mending fences with you, finding some middle ground." "Really?" I kept my voice equally neutral. "Between you and me," he continued, lowering his voice conspiratorially, "there's been some concerning chatter recently about your possible connection to certain business partners of ours. Rumors, probably nothing substantial, but Thomas thought it would be good to clear the air, just to be safe." I went completely cold, ice in my veins. "Rumors?" I asked carefully. "About which business partners?" "Oh, something vague about our consulting partners at Apex," he said casually. "Someone thought they might have seen you at their offices once. I'm absolutely sure it's just a misunderstanding, a case of mistaken identity." My mind raced. How? Who had seen me? When? Where? "I'm not sure what you're referring to," I said calmly, "but please tell my father I have nothing to discuss with him. Nothing at all." I hung up before he could respond. They were getting close. Closer than I'd realized, closer than I'd anticipated. It was time to stop waiting and start acting, time to control this situation before it controlled me. While I was fielding concerned texts and suspicious phone calls in Boston, my father was facing a very different kind of crisis back in Connecticut. I learned later, much later, exactly what happened in that boardroom. A colleague who was there told me every detail. Thomas Morrison had walked into what should have been a routine quarterly financial meeting. Instead, his CFO looked like he'd seen a ghost, face pale, hands shaking slightly. "We have a serious problem with Apex Consulting," the CFO said, without preamble, sliding a folder across that massive mahogany conference table. "What kind of problem?" my father asked, frowning. "Their contract is up for renewal in 60 days. We've sent them our standard extension offer, very generous terms. They haven't responded at all." Richard frowned deeper. "So send another offer. Increase the terms if necessary. Sweeten the deal." "We've tried 3 times already, sir. Their legal team just keeps saying under review and nothing else." "Then call their executives directly. Get someone on the phone." "We've tried that approach as well," the CFO said uncomfortably. "Sir, Apex Consulting is extremely private, unusually private even for this industry. No one ever meets with their leadership. Everything goes through intermediaries, lawyers, account managers." My father's frown deepened into something darker. "We've been working with them for 3 years. Someone at this company must have met with them at some point. Someone must know who runs that operation." "No, sir," the CFO shook his head. "It's all been virtual meetings, legal representatives, professional account managers. No one at Morrison Logistics has ever met the actual ownership, not once in 3 years." Long, heavy silence filled that boardroom. "If they walk away from us," the CFO continued carefully, "we lose 40% of our operational efficiency overnight, immediately. It would take at least 18 months to find an adequate replacement, and that's being extremely optimistic in this current market." "I know what it means," Thomas snapped. He stared at that folder like it might burst into flames. Something was nagging at him. The timing, the silence, the fact that this was all happening right after the party, right after I walked out. "Find out who owns that company," he said finally, his voice dangerously quiet. "I don't care what it takes. I don't care what it costs. I want a name by end of week." What Thomas didn't know, what he was about to discover in the most devastating way possible, was that the name he was searching for so desperately was already on his family tree. Thursday evening, my phone rang again. Linda this time. "Catherine." I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. I wanted to hear what she'd say, what approach she'd take. Sarah, sweetheart. Her voice was pure honey and sugar, the performance of a lifetime. I've been so worried about you since Saturday night. Have you? Of course, darling. You're family. That's what family does. We worry about each other. She laughed softly, like we were sharing some private joke, like we were close. Listen, about the party, your father feels absolutely terrible about what he said. You know how he gets when he's nervous, when he's the center of attention. He was trying to be funny for the crowd, trying to entertain. He exaggerates when he's anxious. You know that about him. He said I had no future and no worth in front of 200 people, I said flatly. He exaggerates when he's performing, she repeated smoothly. You know that. Pause. Recalibration. I could practically hear her changing tactics. Why don't you come home this weekend? We could have a nice dinner, just the four of us. Clear the air properly. Start fresh. Move forward together as a family. I could picture her so clearly, sitting in that pristine, perfectly decorated living room, rehearsing this entire call beforehand, planning exactly which emotional buttons to push, which vulnerabilities to exploit. The concerned stepmother, the peacemaker, the bridge between troubled daughter and wounded father. Does Dad want to apologize? I asked directly. Slight hesitation, barely noticeable. He wants to move forward. That's what truly matters, isn't it? Focusing on the future, not dwelling on the past. So no actual apology? Sarah, don't be difficult. We're trying to help you here. Help me? Now? After all these years? I laughed, actually laughed out loud. Catherine, you've spent 22 years making absolutely sure I knew I wasn't really part of this family. Now suddenly you're calling to help me? Why now? What changed? Another pause, longer this time, more telling. I think we both know there's more going on here than just family drama, she said, her voice dropping all pretense of warmth, going cold, going calculating. Whatever you're planning, and I know you're planning something, Sarah, it would be better for everyone involved if you just came home and talked this through properly, like an adult. No. I hung up before she could respond, before she could say another word. They knew something. They sensed something. They just didn't know how much they should actually be afraid of yet. The next morning, Friday, I drove to Eleanor Chen's office in downtown Boston. Eleanor had been my grandmother's lawyer for decades, and since the trust fund had become mine, she'd become my lawyer as well, my advisor, my ally. Her office was sleek and efficient, all glass and steel, Boston skyline views stretching for miles, the kind of place where serious, important business happened. I've been expecting you, she said, when I walked in, not even looking up at her computer. I assume this is about Morrison Logistics, about them investigating Apex, trying to find out who owns it. They're getting close, I confirmed, sitting down across from her massive desk. Eleanor nodded, completely unsurprised. She'd seen this coming from miles away. Your anonymity was always going to be temporary, she said matter-of-factly. The question now is how do you want this to unfold, on your terms or theirs? She spread documents across her desk. The Apex contract with Morrison Logistics, every clause, every renewal term, every exit provision laid out clearly. The trust fund documents from Grandma Elizabeth, the incorporation papers for Apex Consulting, everything, every piece of leverage I had. Your contract includes a standard 30-day termination notice. Eleanor pointed to the relevant section with her pen. You can end the agreement for any reason whatsoever. No penalties, no legal exposure, clean break. And my grandmother's trust? I asked. Completely separate from the Morrison family estate. Legally unimpeachable. Thomas has absolutely no claim to any of it, even if he tried to contest it in court, which he won't because he'd lose badly and publicly. She looked at me over her reading glasses. Elizabeth made absolutely sure that she protected you completely. I stared at all those papers spread before me. Everything was in perfect order. Everything was legal. Every T crossed, every I dotted, every angle covered. What did my grandmother say about all this when she set up the trust? I asked quietly. Eleanor smiled, sad but proud.
She said, and I quote, "One day, Sarah is going to need leverage against that family, and when that day comes, I want her to have every possible advantage." Tears pricked at my eyes. Ah, Grandma Elizabeth, still protecting me, still believing in me, even from beyond the grave. She also said something else, Eleanor added softly. She said, "Tell Sarah not to be cruel about this. Just be honest. Sometimes the truth is punishment enough." I nodded slowly. The truth. Just the truth. That afternoon, I sat down with Daniel Martinez, my CFO, in Apex's main conference room. Daniel had been with me since year 2. He knew absolutely everything about my family, about Morrison Logistics, about why I'd kept my name meticulously off all the paperwork. He was loyal, competent, trustworthy, the closest thing I had to a true ally in the business world. "They want to renew the contract," he said, scrolling through his tablet. 5 more years, actually increased the terms by 12%. They're nervous, very nervous. "They should be," I said quietly. I pulled up the financial projections on the large conference room screen. Numbers don't lie, they never do, and these numbers told a devastating story. If we walked away, Morrison Logistics would lose 40% of their operational efficiency within 60 days. In the logistics industry, that's not just a dip or a setback, that's a freefall. That's a company killer. "Derek just officially took over as CEO," Daniel observed. "If this hits on his watch, his reputation is finished before he even really starts."
We sat with that reality for a long moment. It felt surreal, holding this much power over people who had spent literal decades making me feel completely powerless. "What do you want to do?" Daniel asked, finally. I'd been thinking about this for days, about Grandma Elizabeth's words, about revenge versus truth, about what kind of person I actually wanted to be. "Draft the termination letter," I said, finally, decisively. 30-day notice per the standard contract terms, no malice, no accusations, just clean business. And the reason? Strategic repositioning of client portfolio. That's all they need to know officially. I paused, took a breath. "But I'm also going to write a personal letter to my father. Separate envelope, private. He deserves to know exactly who he's been depending on all these years, and exactly why that's ending now." Daniel nodded slowly. "When do you want to send everything?" "Monday morning, first thing. No more waiting, no more hiding." I spent all of Sunday writing that letter. Not the official termination notice. Daniel handled that. All the professional language, the legal provisions, the clinical restructuring explanation that would go in the company file. I wrote the personal letter, the truth. I went through 7 drafts. The first was too angry, pages and pages of accusations, every hurt cataloged and condemned. The second was too cold, too clinical. The third was too desperate, too emotional. The final version was simple, clean, factual, honest. "Dear Dad, you said I had no future. You told 200 people I was worthless. I want you to know something. The company you called the backbone of Morrison Logistics, Apex Consulting, is mine. I built it from nothing. I own it completely. For 3 years, the daughter you publicly dismissed has been a cornerstone of your business success. I'm ending our contract, not as revenge, as a boundary, as self-protection. Grandma Elizabeth left me a trust fund you never knew existed. She saw what you refused to see, that I was worth investing in, worth believing in. Everything I have, every success, every achievement, I built myself, with her faith, without your support, without your approval, without you. I don't need you to apologize. I don't need you to understand. I just need you to know that I am not what you said I was. I never was. Don't contact me again. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison." I included my middle name deliberately, the name I'd legally added 3 years ago in honor of the only person in my family who had truly believed in me. I also included a photocopy of the Apex Incorporation papers, my name as sole owner, clearly, undeniably visible. I read that letter 3 times, checked for typos, checked for excessive emotion, found none.
Just truth. Clear, simple, devastating. Sometimes, I thought, that's the most devastating weapon of all. Not anger, not revenge, just truth. Monday morning, 9 a.m., the courier confirmation email arrived. The package had been delivered to Morrison Logistics headquarters. Someone named Patricia Chen had signed for it, Thomas's executive assistant. I remembered her from childhood. I sat in my office, watching my phone, waiting for the inevitable explosion. 10:15 a.m., missed call from Thomas Morrison. 10:17 a.m., missed call from Thomas Morrison. 10:23 a.m., missed call from Catherine Morrison. 10:45 a.m., missed call from Thomas Morrison. 11:02 a.m., text message from Thomas, call me immediately. 11:34 a.m., text message from Derek, what the hell is this? Call us now. 11:54 a.m., text message from Catherine, Sarah, this isn't funny. Pick up your phone. By noon, I had 12 missed calls, 8 text messages, and 2 voicemails I didn't bother listening to. I didn't respond to any of them, not a single one. I had waited 12 years for this moment. They could wait a few more hours. At 2 p.m., my assistant knocked softly on my door. Miss Morrison, there's a family here who says they need to see you immediately. They're very insistent. They're waiting in the lobby. So they'd driven to Boston. 5 hours of traffic and panic and desperate strategizing just to confront me in person. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection in the window, straightened my blazer. Send them to conference room B, I said, calmly. I'll be there in 5 minutes. This was it. The confrontation I'd imagined 1,000 times. The conversation I'd prepared for without knowing when it would finally come. I thought of Grandma Elizabeth, of her letter, of her faith in me, of her final words. Don't be cruel, just be honest. I stood up, smoothed my skirt, and walked toward that conference room. Time to be honest. Time to tell the truth. Time to be free. Conference room B had glass walls. I'd chosen it deliberately, strategically. My 15 employees could see inside clearly, though they couldn't hear through the soundproofing. Witnesses, not to humiliate anyone, but to ensure the meeting stayed civil, professional, controlled.
Thomas, Catherine, and Derek stood clustered near the window, looking out at the Boston skyline they'd never expected to see from this perspective. From my domain, my territory, my world. My father turned when I entered. His face was gray, ashen, older than I'd ever seen him look before. He'd aged 10 years in 3 days. Sarah. His voice actually cracked on my name, broke. What is this? What are you doing? Hello, Dad. Catherine, Derek. I took a seat calmly at the head of the conference table, professional, composed, in control. I assume you received my letter. Your letter? Derek stepped forward aggressively, jabbing his finger toward me. You can't just... This isn't... Sit down, Derek. My voice was quiet, but absolutely firm. I won't discuss anything with you yelling across the room like that. He looked at my father, uncertain, lost. Thomas nodded sharply, a command. They sat. For a long moment, no one spoke. The tension was suffocating. Finally, Thomas leaned forward, trying to take control. This is all some kind of misunderstanding, some kind of mistake. What part? I asked, calmly. Apex Consulting. You can't possibly. A company like that? You didn't. I did. I slid a folder across the table. Official documents. Company registration. Tax filings going back 3 years. Complete client list. 3 years ago, your company signed a contract with mine. You praised my work publicly at industry events. You called us transformative, essential, brilliant. You just didn't know you were praising me. Catherine's face had gone completely pale. But you don't have a degree. You were just a what, Catherine? I met her eyes steadily. A disappointment? A failure? A burden? I shook my head slowly. I was a 20-year-old who was told to sacrifice her future for her stepbrother's career. I built something anyway. I succeeded anyway. I did it without you, without any of you. Silence, heavy, crushing. My father stared at those documents like they might spontaneously combust if he looked hard enough. Okay, Thomas's voice was strained, the mask of corporate composure cracking visibly. Okay, I apologize. I apologize for the party, for what I said. Is that what you want to hear? I'm sorry. Now can we please talk about the contract like rational adults? You're sorry because you need something from me, I said quietly. That's not an apology, that's negotiation. For God's sake, Sarah, Derek slammed his palm on the conference table. Do you have any idea what happens if you pull this contract? 20% of our workforce gone, dozens of families affected, all because of your petty revenge? It's not revenge, I said calmly. It's a business decision based on strategic repositioning. He was standing now, veins visible in his neck, face flushed red. You've been planning this for years, haven't you? Waiting, plotting, just waiting to destroy us. This is sick. You're sick. I planned nothing. I kept my voice absolutely level. I built a company. Your company chose to become dependent on mine. That's not my fault. That's not my problem. You could have told us, Catherine interjected, her voice high and strained. You could have said something. You could have been honest. When, Catherine? When exactly? When you told me I didn't need education because I'd find a husband, when you spread rumors that I had mental health problems, when you stood by silently while my father destroyed my future, when? She had no answer, just silence. I turned to my father. Dad, you want to know the worst part? The part that really breaks my heart? He looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in his life. I would have kept the contract going indefinitely. I wasn't planning any of this. I just wanted to build something good, something successful, prove to myself I could do it. But then you stood in front of 200 people and told them I was worthless, that I had no future, that I was nothing but a burden looking for a husband to support me. I paused. Let that sink in. You chose this, Dad, not me. You. Thomas's jaw worked. For just a moment, just a fraction of a second, I thought I saw something like recognition in his eyes, like he finally understood what he'd done, what he'd destroyed. Then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. What do you want? He asked flatly. All business now. Money? A position in the company? What's your price? Nothing you can give me. There must be something. Everyone has a price. You're not listening. I don't want anything from you. I never did. I just want you to know the truth. I want you to understand exactly who I am, what I built, what you lost. Fine. Thomas's voice went ice cold, all vulnerability gone, replaced by the steel I'd known my whole life. If that's how you want to play this, if that's your final decision, then you walk away from this family completely. You're done. Finished. No inheritance. Nothing. I almost laughed. The absurdity was too perfect. Haha. Dad, you cut me off at 20 years old. You erased me from your life 12 years ago. What inheritance? What am I walking away from that you didn't already take? You could make things very difficult for you legally, he threatened. I have connections, lawyers, resources. On what grounds? I leaned forward. Every document is legal. Every contract was signed in perfect good faith. Every communication was professional. There's nothing here you can sue me for, and we both know it. He glared at me, desperate now, searching for leverage. Actually, I'm completely sure, I continued. My lawyer, who was also Grandma Elizabeth's lawyer, has already reviewed every possible legal angle, anticipated every move you might make. I let that sink in. Let him understand the full scope. You remember Eleanor Chen?
Grandma Elizabeth used her specifically, deliberately, because she knew you'd try something exactly like this someday. She knew exactly what kind of man you are. Catherine's face had gone completely pale. But Elizabeth knew about all of this? About the company? About everything?
She left me a trust fund, I said clearly. $800,000, specifically structured so none of you could touch a single penny of it, so you couldn't control me ever again. I pulled out a photocopy of the trust document, slid it across the table. She knew exactly what kind of family she raised, what kind of values you had. She knew what you did to me with the tuition, with the broken promises, with everything, and she protected me from all of you. Thomas's face went from red to white, shock, betrayal, rage. She had no right. She had every right, I interrupted firmly. It was her money, her decision, her love. I stood up, smoothed my skirt. This meeting was over. This meeting is over. We're done here. I've said everything I came to say. Sarah, wait, Derek started. We're done, I repeated firmly. I've said everything. There's nothing left to discuss. I walked toward the door, then paused, turned back. One more thing. One final boundary. If you contact me again, calls, texts, emails, showing up at my office, anything, I will release every email, every document, every record of how this family has treated me over the years. All of it is legal, all of it is carefully documented and backed up in multiple locations, and all of it would make a very, very interesting story for the business press, for the Connecticut community, for everyone who thinks you're such an upstanding family man. I opened the door wider. The receptionist will show you out. Goodbye. I stood in that doorway watching them gather themselves. 3 people who had spent my entire life making me feel small, worthless, invisible, now looking very small themselves, diminished, powerless. My father rose slowly, like an old man suddenly painfully aware of his age and mortality. Catherine clutched her handbag like a shield, like protection. Derek stared at me with something completely new in his eyes. Not contempt anymore, not arrogance. Fear. Pure, undiluted fear. This isn't over, Marcus said weakly. Yes, I said firmly. It absolutely is. It's completely over. I meant every word, every syllable. I spent 12 years building a life you tried to convince me I couldn't have. I did it without your help, without your approval, without your permission, without your support, and I'll continue to do it without any of you in my life, ever. Catherine's lower lip trembled, the performance of motherly concern one last time. Sarah, please, we're family. That has to mean something. We share blood, Catherine. That's all we share. That's the only thing connecting us. I held the door open wider, final, unmistakable. I'm not asking for an apology anymore. I'm not asking for reconciliation or understanding. I'm setting a boundary, a permanent one. Don't contact me again. Don't mention me to your friends, your colleagues, anyone. Just let me go. Just let me be free. Thomas stopped directly in front of me. For a moment, we just looked at each other, father and daughter, strangers who happened to share the last name, nothing more. You really hate us that much? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. No, Dad. I met his eyes steadily, honestly. I don't hate you. That's what you still don't understand, what you'll never understand. I just don't need you anymore. I don't need your approval. I don't need your love. I don't need anything from you. I paused. Let that truth settle. And that's something you'll have to learn to live with. He had no response, no comeback, nothing. They walked out through the lobby, past my employees, who carefully, professionally pretended not to watch. The glass doors closed behind them with a soft, final click. I went back to my desk, opened my laptop, and got back to work. The fallout was immediate and severe. 2 months after I terminated the contract, the consequences became brutally public. Morrison Logistics announced a 20% workforce reduction, 70 employees laid off right before the holidays.
The press release blamed market conditions and strategic restructuring, but everyone in the Connecticut business community knew the real story. Their most important consulting partner had walked away, and they couldn't recover. Derek, barely 3 months into his role as CEO, was already being questioned by the board. His vision for the future was crumbling under the weight of his father's bridge burning. Thomas came out of retirement to help manage the crisis. The triumphant exit he'd planned, the legacy he'd built, was unraveling thread by thread. But the real damage was to their reputation. Word spread. Not from me, I kept my mouth completely shut, but 200 people had watched my father humiliate his daughter at that party. And when those same 200 people heard that the daughter was actually his company's most important business partner, the whispers started, grew, became roars. Did you hear about Thomas Morrison? Publicly mocked his own daughter. Turns out she was keeping his entire company afloat. Always thought there was something off about that family. In Connecticut business circles, reputation is everything, absolutely everything, and Thomas's was crumbling, disintegrating, turning to dust. A former colleague told me that at a recent industry dinner, Thomas sat completely alone at his table. No one wanted to be associated with the man who'd publicly disowned the daughter who'd secretly been his backbone. I didn't feel triumphant hearing this. I didn't feel satisfied or vindicated. I just felt tired and free. Grandma Elizabeth had been absolutely right. Sometimes the truth is punishment enough. Sometimes you don't need to do anything else. The truth does it all by itself. 6 months later, I sat in a therapist's office in Bacon Hill. "You don't seem like someone who needs therapy," Dr. Patel said during our first session. "Everyone needs therapy," I replied with a small smile. "I'm just finally letting myself admit it."
We talked about my family, about the years of invisibility, about the burden of building success in silence, about the strange, complicated grief of cutting ties with people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. "Do you regret what you did?" she asked during one session. "No, I meant it completely. I regret that it had to happen. I regret that they forced my hand. But I don't regret protecting myself. I don't regret choosing me." Outside of therapy, my life was genuinely good, better than I'd ever imagined possible. Apex was thriving, growing. We'd replaced the Morrison contract with 3 smaller clients, more diversified, more stable, less risk. Daniel got a well-deserved promotion. I hired 4 brilliant new employees. We moved to a bigger office with gorgeous views of Boston Harbor. I reconnected with Uncle Robert. We had dinner once a month now. He told me stories about my mother, the real ones, not the sanitized versions my father had fed me over the years. "She was fierce," Robert said one evening over wine. "Stubborn, a fighter, independent." He smiled at me across the table. "You're just like her, Sarah. She would be so incredibly proud of you. So proud." I still keep the photo of Grandma Elizabeth on my desk at work. I visit her grave every single month without fail, leave fresh flowers, tell her about my life, my successes, my struggles. It feels strange sometimes talking to a headstone, but also healing, necessary. "I did it, Grandma," I told her one spring morning, kneeling beside her grave. "I didn't let them define me. I didn't let them break me." The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, soft, gentle, like a whisper. If I listened closely enough, if I really paid attention, I could almost hear her voice. "I knew you would, sweetheart. I always knew." So here's what I learned. Here's what I want you to take away from my story. Your worth is not determined by a degree hanging on a wall. Your worth is not determined by your family's opinion of you. Your worth is not determined by who believes in you or who tries desperately to tear you down. Your worth is determined by what you build when no one is watching, by who you become when everyone has counted you out, by the life you create with your own 2 hands, your own heart, your own determination. My father thought he was teaching me a lesson at that retirement party. He thought he was putting me in my place, reminding me of my worth in his eyes. What he actually did was set me free, completely, totally,
permanently free. I don't hate my family. That's the part people struggle most to understand. Hate takes energy. Hate is a chain. Hate keeps you bound to the people who hurt you. I'd rather spend that energy on people who actually deserve it, on work I believe in, on relationships that nourish my soul, on a life that's truly, authentically mine. Boundaries aren't about revenge. They're not about punishment. They're about protection. They're about self-love. They're about saying clearly, firmly, this is where my life begins and your damage ends. If you're in a family that makes you feel small, less than, invisible, if you have people in your life who see your potential as a threat instead of a beautiful gift, if you've ever been the family disappointment, the scapegoat, the black sheep, the invisible one, I see you. I truly see you. I've been you. I've walked that path. And I promise you, I absolutely promise you, there is life on the other side of walking away. Beautiful, free, authentic life. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for witnessing my truth. You are not what they said you were. You never were. You are so, so much more. Until next time, this is Sarah, and I'm finally, completely, beautifully free.